Welcome. This is Jim, host of the Faith Influencer podcast, where we're going to dive into discussions on faith's role in everyday life, from navigating blended families to overcoming challenges. I'm a husband, a father, a Bible teacher, an advocate for applying faith to everyday life. So tune in as I share personal stories, valuable insights, and practical wisdom. So you've been given a new chance, you have a new family, a new blended family. I want to ask you a question. So why are you sabotaging it? This is Jim Cunningham with Faith Influencer, excited to be back with you again. And we're going to talk about some of the things that sabotage your new blended family, or not even new, just your blended family. So I have a compassion for people who have remarried, joined families, because that's my world, that's my life. But I also realize that it's very easy to sabotage your blended family. I've said this 1,000 times to you, that second marriages in a higher percentage end up in divorce than first marriages. Well, you know why? Because we tend to sabotage our new marriage, our new relationship, our blended family. And then we find ourselves going through the whole struggle again. So let's talk about why people or how people sabotage their family. And I want to talk about the first one that's at the top of the list. I don't know if we'll get past this one or not. If we will, I'll go to the number two. If not, I'll do it another time. Because the number one thing that sabotages marriages in a blended family is comparison. Comparing what you have to what other people have or to what you used to have. Comparison is the killer of relationships. And I'm going to tell you why. Some of you are going to be able to say as I go through this that you're guilty of this. Some of you are going to say, I feel that my spouse does this. I was talking to a man years ago. Now get this. This was an old man. He was in his 80s. He lived next door to the church. And at that time I was pastoring. And I was the pastor of the church, and I'd see people in the community. And so I walked over because he was right next door. And I saw JR out in the garage. And he and his wife came to our church. And she was very involved. But you could tell they didn't have any kind of close, good relationship. They'd been married forever and all of this. And I'm talking to JR, and he's telling me about all the stuff in his life. And JR makes this statement out of the blue. Kind of shocked me because I didn't see it coming. He talked about this lady years ago that he used to work with while he was still married, while he was married to his wife. He said, there was this lady and she was so nice. And this is what he said to me. He said, you know what? I would have made her a good husband. That's what he said. And it caught me off guard. He said, I would have made her a good husband. Well, I thought about that later. And you know what I thought? Same thing you're thinking. No, you wouldn't. If you don't make your wife now a good husband, why do you think that you're going to make someone else a good husband? You know why? Because he was comparing. He was comparing who he's married with all of his life, this lady, to someone else that he didn't know. He didn't know what she would be like to live with. He didn't know any of that. Just from the outside looking in, he was attracted and thought he would be a good husband to her. No, that's comparison. So comparison will strangle your relationship. Let's talk about why. Well, when you compare with other people, do you know what you're always doing? You just mark it down. You think about it. You're going to compare the person you're with. Let's just say it's a wife comparing her husband to someone else. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to compare your husband's weaknesses with someone else's strengths. That's what you do in comparison. You don't compare strength with strength. You compare weakness with strength. You compare something you don't like about your husband to something you do like about someone else's husband. Here's the testimony of one lady. She said, I got caught up in comparison because I would go to ladies' groups in our church. And she said, I would hear one lady over here saying, oh, my husband prays with us when we go to bed. Or my husband always prays over our meal. Or my husband reads the Bible. And she says, my husband doesn't do that. My husband doesn't pray. My husband doesn't read the Bible to us. He loves Jesus. That's just not something. And she starts comparing to someone else inside the church and how they act or what they do. And that comparison, you know what it did? It made her dissatisfied with her relationship. Now, there's ways to handle that, and she can communicate with her husband and share her desires in a loving way, what she would like to happen in her household. But when you secretly, inside of your heart and inside of your mind, you begin to compare him to him, then you know what happens? What happens is that you don't know it, but he begins somehow subconsciously to sense that you're dissatisfied. I'll tell you what that does in a minute. So this comparison thing is very normal. You have to fight against it. But when you start thinking about what you like about that person and your husband doesn't do that, then you're on the wrong track. Here's the other thing, and this is so stupid. Why do we do this? The other area of comparison comes not with even people you know, but it comes from social media. How many times have you looked at social media and saw something that you thought, I wish it was that way? Well, it's probably not that way on social media either. They're just portraying something that's probably not real for them. People don't show the real life on social media. They only show the good points. They only show the vacations. They only show the Christmases. They don't show real life, but somehow or another, we get sucked into thinking that's their perfect life, and I have this imperfect life, and that comparison is going to strangle your relationship. So here's what happens. When someone compares and your spouse begins to sense the comparison, when someone begins to compare, here's what happens in your relationship. First of all, it causes the person to feel inadequate. It makes them feel inadequate. Then it begins to create resentment. From inadequacy to resentment, and from resentment, walls go up. And sometimes there's not even an explanation inside the marriage relationship why this is happening, but yet you begin to create distance in your relationship with your spouse. Comparison can be the culprit. Now, let me tell you the worst comparison. Now, this is a blended family podcast, right? So I want you to lean in on this. This is a blended family podcast. And the temptation for blended families is to compare your new spouse with your old spouse. When someone does that, you know what I want to say to them? Then you should have stayed with them. Is that what you want? Why did you leave that? If that was so good, why did you leave that? It's comparing your current husband with and then if you're dumb enough, this is really dumb. If you're dumb enough, husband or wife, to say, well, my first husband used to do this, then you are cutting the throat of your marriage. Don't be so dumb that even if you're thinking it, don't be so dumb to say it out loud and compare your husband or your wife with your previous husband or wife. I don't know if you can overcome that. Oh, you can overcome it in the sense that you don't have to get a divorce because that happened. You don't have to split up because that happened. But I don't know that if you can overcome the thought pattern that creates in your spouse if you say something out loud about the previous spouse. I mean, even if it's something simple, if you say, husband, if you say to your new wife in your blended family that your previous wife was such a good cook, your current wife isn't, but your previous wife was such a good cook. She used to make things homemade. If you're dumb enough to say something like that, probably you should be hit over the head because that is so detrimental to your relationship and that hurts your spouse so much that I don't know if that thought will ever leave her mind. It will be there, and even though she will forgive you, and even though that you go on and you're loving towards her, back in the back of her mind, she remembers that you said that. I'm just telling you, comparing one to another is one of the worst things that you can do. So I want you to do this instead. I want you, let me just say this to men. I want you to treat your wife like Eve. I'm pausing so that sinks in. I want you to make your wife an Eve. You remember Eve, right? Adam and Eve. I'm talking about Eve in the Bible, Eve in the book of Genesis. Adam and Eve. I want you to make your wife feel like Eve. Now let me explain it. Here's what I mean when I say I want you to make your wife feel like Eve. Guess what? For Adam, there was only one woman. There wasn't another woman in the world. There was only one woman for him. Well, there really was only one woman for him. It was Eve. But that's how I want you to make your wife feel. I want you to make her feel like she's Eve, meaning there is no other woman in the world. There is no other woman in the whole world. You're the only woman there is. I mean, what would it be like instead of comparing your wife with someone else or making her feel like someone else is greater in your eyes than she? What happens if you make her feel like she is the only woman in the world? I'm telling you, follow that trail instead of being dissatisfied because there are some weaknesses in her that you don't like. By the way, by the way, those who want to compare their spouse, look in the mirror. You're not the greatest prize either. I don't know why we look at a weakness in our spouse and miss that we have weaknesses. You look at them at their weaknesses. Well, you know what? They have some weaknesses to look at in your life as well. Be a little sensitive that it goes both ways. You're not the greatest thing either. So comparison is going to destroy that. Well, that's one comparison. We got it. Don't go there. Don't do that. Make your spouse feel like they are the one and only person in the world. Don't let your spouse catch you looking at someone else, admiring someone else, wishing that you had some of what they have. Don't let that happen. That's number one. I'm talking about blended families. I'm talking about what sabotages them. I'm going to give you one other just for time's sake. Comparing is one. Number two, the second thing is withholding. I'm talking about protecting. I'm talking about protecting what is yours. That's the other thing. I've worked with blended families so long, and I have one, and I've had one for over 15 years now, so I understand this. Your tendency when you walk into your blended family is going to be to, quote, protect what is yours. It is this. It's a feeling and it's an emotion that some of what is yours is in danger because you have this new person, this new spouse. Well, it's obvious where that comes from. That comes from hurts, feelings, and emotions, and disappointments from a previous relationship. This is one of the tendencies in blended families. This is why we're talking about that. Your blended family obviously had some hurts. That's why you're not there anymore. Your blended family had some issues. That's why you're not there anymore. And you were not able to overcome those. Now you have a new relationship. And if you're not careful, you're going to carry some of the feelings that you had for your former spouse and you're going to project them on your new spouse. And that's going to create these walls around what is, quote, yours. What is, quote, yours. Now, the number one thing that falls inside of those walls are your children. You're going to feel like, okay, I've got to protect my children. Well, listen, if you have this idea, I wish you would hear me before you get married the second time. If you have these emotions that you're going to enter a new relationship, but you're going to create a barricade around those things that are important to you, like your children and your money and those kinds of things, don't marry. Don't get remarried. Or if you feel that you have those feelings, then you need to work through those before you get married. It is the most difficult thing to try to work through issues after you get married. You have to work through them before. Well, if you're married and you have those issues, work through them now, but ideally work through them before you get married. So that idea that I'm going to protect what is mine is detrimental. It's one of the things that is more of a tendency in a blended family than it is in a first marriage. Now, here's what it's going to do. It's going to hinder the connection that you have with your spouse. It's going to hinder the connection that you two are trying to create because you've marked off some things that are not touchable by your spouse. So that's going to create in them that there's not a oneness. Now, let me tell you some practical ways that you do that. You get married and you say, well, I'm going to have a separate bank account from you. How many people do that? Some of you are going to give me some feedback on that, and I like it. I like your feedback. Tell me why I'm wrong. But some of you are going to enter your marriage and say, okay, here's how we're going to make this work. I'm going to have mine, and you're going to have yours. I'm going to have my bank account. You're going to have your bank account. I'm going to have my kids. You're going to have your kids. Um, I'm going to treat mine like I want. You treat yours like you want. I'm going to spend on mine what I want to spend. You spend on yours what you want to spend. We're going to create this separate life in the same household. That's really what you're doing when you're saying I'm going to separate everything, but we're going to live together. I don't understand when you have that kind of guardrail around you and what's yours, how emotionally you're ever going to connect. I don't know how that's possible. I don't know how you're going to do it. When I remarried and we created a blended family, I'll be honest with you, it was like it was my first marriage. That's how I was treating it. This is my wife. This is our relationship. We are married. We are together. We are one. We are one. We're not separate. We are one. So we're bringing everything together. Now you have to work through some of those things, and it's different than the first marriage, but we're not creating walls around everything. We want to connect in every area of our life. We have to tread lightly. We have to do some things differently, but we're still bringing it all together. There was not even a thought, not even a consideration that we should create separate bank accounts. I'm not sure the justification behind creating separate bank accounts. Tell me why. Tell me in the comments why you need to create a separate bank account. I am not a believer in that at all. I think that's a cop-out for saying, I want mine and I don't want you to touch what's mine. That's what I think you're really doing. So there's going to be a reluctance. There's going to be a reluctance to really be married. Married legally, yes, but married spiritually, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, nah, you're not going to do that when you separate everything under the same household. So here are the two big things. Number one, you're going to have this tendency to compare, fight that tendency. That's going to be a tool of the enemy. That's going to be a tool of the devil, by the way, to create dissatisfaction in your household, is to get you to compare. That's number one. And then the number two, the other tool is, oh, he's not going to treat my children right. He's not going to treat my money right. He's not going to do any of this. So I'm going to build a wall around it, protecting what's yours. Those are the two things that I see so often in blended families that you have to fight against. Now, what do you think about that? Put it in the comments. Thank you that I get so many comments from you. It's been overwhelming at times. I can't answer all of them, but I try to answer as many as I can. Comment somehow, like them or something, but I appreciate your comments. I'm looking forward to hearing it. Thank you as always for joining us in our podcast. This is Jim Cunningham with Faith Influencer, and we'll talk soon.